Hi everyone, my name's Beth Wendt and I'm a senior researcher at Peloton. My colleague Andrea and I were planning to give this talk together, but since we can't this year, I'll be taking on the first half of the talk and she'll be taking on the second. Andrea and I do research at Peloton. You may have heard of us before. We're most well known for our bike. In fact, I suspect that some of you listening to this talk are Peloton members yourself. For those who don't know, Peloton is the world's largest interactive fitness platform. We stream live and on-demand content across a variety of fitness disciplines to a community of over 2.6 million members worldwide. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what's this talk all about? In fact, you might even be thinking, I get it. They do research on exercise, and they're probably some of those Peloton fanatics who talk about their workouts 24/7. While I might be somewhat guilty of that, let me assure you, this talk is about much more. Let me start by taking you to a place, a feeling even, that I'm sure you're quite familiar with as a researcher. That feeling when your stakeholders say something like, is there any way you could do this more quickly? Do you really have to do all that to get answers? Or my personal favorite, can't you just show some employees a screenshot to hear what they think? Now, stakeholders who ask things like this are not unique to Peloton. I'm sure it's something that you've all experienced before. But you guys get it, we can't always approach research this way. Because high quality research is about replicating authentic experiences. And that's what our talk is about today. Andrea and I have worked closely with our stakeholders and teammates to help them understand why doing research with a static prototype isolated from exercise is often not the right approach at Peloton. Instead, we've championed the importance of authentic and realistic research whenever possible. And today, we're going to be sharing our learnings and experiences with you. My hope is that by the end of this talk, you'll be thinking differently about authenticity and research. You'll be thinking more critically and more creatively about your own practice. Are you thinking about authenticity in all the work that you do? Are you taking into consideration all the factors that impact authenticity? And how can you learn from what we've learned to take your research practice to the next level? Now, before we go further with our story, I think it's important to understand context. Peloton is designed for at-home fitness. And people have been working out at home for a long time. But in recent years, at-home fitness has evolved. You no longer need to rewind a VHS tape to get your workout started. At-home fitness has become much more diverse, accessible, and exciting. Which brings me to our products. Andrea and I do research on the whole suite of products at Peloton. Our bike and our tread, which both have their own custom interface, our digital apps, our TV apps, and even our studio workout experience, where we film and stream our fitness classes. Our research is across the board. We work on software, we work on hardware, and we also work on content. I think what we do is super cool, but it also can be really challenging, especially when it comes to authenticity. Doing authentic research is not easy. And doing authentic research on fitness experiences is even more difficult. There are a lot of unique challenges that we face, and over the next few slides, we're going to be sharing those with you, as well as how we're currently tackling them. Again, our hope is that what we've gone through will help inspire you in your own research practice. Let's start with one of the most important challenges that we face, and that is the fact that things happen when we exercise that we just can't fake. And those things that happen can have a profound impact in how someone experiences Peloton. So what kind of stuff? Well, sweat for starters. Not everyone looks quite as lovely as our instructor Robin here, who has a nice healthy glow while she's teaching a class. But sweat happens. It drips into our eyes, it makes it difficult to use a touch screen, it makes the wood floor beneath you slippery. Sweat impacts your experience. Fatigue is another one, that desire to quit, losing focus, maybe having a hard time hitting the buttons on your screen. We can't fake that for research. Hunger, thirst, bodily functions, those things that distract you. And what about stuff that happens up here? Endorphins, emotions, cognitive overload. Our members call that last one runner's brain. They tell us often about how when they're in the middle of a really tough workout, they just can't process new information. Which is why Andrea and I always advocate for research that involves actual exercise, whether that's in our members' homes or in our lab. This way we can make sure we're accounting for all of these factors. Testing a prototype on a computer is a completely different experience than trying out a new feature while you're in the middle of a really tough Tabata ride. So again, as I go through these slides and these challenges with you, I'll ask you to think critically. Are you thinking about this stuff in your research practice? We check social media on our phones anytime, anywhere, often without planning. Working out is different. Typically, people work out with intention at a particular time and in a particular place. And with Peloton, that place, that environment, is often always the home. Whether that's a luxurious penthouse or a tiny studio apartment. And there are a lot of factors about that environment that impacts how someone experiences Peloton. For example, space. When you're working out at home, you can choose anywhere to exercise, but you also might have much less space than you would have at the gym. Consider a workout that involves push-ups, burpees, or jumping jacks. You need a fair amount of free space for that. Who's around you also matters. For some of our members, working out at home means privacy. For others, it means interruptions from spouses, partners, roommates, children, and even pets. Setup matters too. What kind of floor do you have? What kind of equipment do you have? Who lives below you, if anyone? And what about sound, noise, and volume? What about what you're wearing? All of those things matter and can impact your experience. For this reason, Andrea and I love to be able to do research in our members' homes, whether that's ethnographic interviews or diary studies. But when that can't happen, when we can't get to that true authentic environment, we do our best to replicate our members' homes within our lab. We usually ask our members to send along a picture of their home workout setup before they come in for a study, and we rearrange the furniture in our lab to best replicate that space. Here's an example. Sure, this doesn't look like a living room, but we paid special attention to the amount of space that this member had around their bike, and we rearranged the furniture, in this case, a whiteboard, some footstools, and a table, to represent the walls and the furniture in this member's home. We also paid attention to the workout setup that she had at home, the equipment that she had, and the flooring. As a result, we've gotten really good at rolling up and moving rugs. Peloton is for everyone. All shapes, all sizes, and all fitness levels, which is why we have to think really critically when we're working on recruiting for studies. We have to think beyond the basic demographics. For example, endurance and fitness level matter. Not all of our members can complete the same classes, and not all of our members can work out for the same amount of time. These are things that can impact their experience with Peloton, and we have to make sure we're taking them into account when we're recruiting for a study. Anthropometry also matters. Because we work on hardware, we have to think carefully about how different size people with different size body parts will interact with our products. Joint and bone health, as well as injuries, are also important. And those basic demographics, like age and gender, they do matter, but more so in the ways that they relate to exercise. For example, as we age, our bodies and the way that they move change. For that reason, it's often important to recruit a range of ages for our studies. With each new study, we spend a lot of time thinking about who to recruit. We meet with all the teams that are involved, hardware, software, industrial design, product, UX, and talk to them about all the different factors that they're concerned about with this product. And then we make sure we take all of those into consideration in our recruitment criteria. I remember the first time I walked into a boutique fitness studio by myself. I felt so self-conscious. I was convinced that everyone would look like this, strong, confident, and perfectly coiffed. I was so nervous. What would they think of me? What if I made a fool of myself? One of the joys of Peloton is that you can work out at home alone. That insecurity disappears. So imagine then agreeing to participate in a study at Peloton where you have to exercise. That can be really intimidating. So let's put ourselves in a participant's shoes here. What kind of fears and vulnerabilities might be arising as they prepare for a study like this? Well, what to wear for starters. Do I need to wear Peloton branded clothing? Do I need to look cute? Or is it okay for me to wear whatever I normally work out in? Who's gonna be watching me? Are the instructors gonna be there critiquing me? What if I can't keep up with the class? What if there's new movements and I don't know how to do them? What if there's new equipment and it's really confusing? What if I have to talk about my body? Participating in an exercise study can be a really vulnerable place for someone, which is why, as researchers, we need to do everything that we can to help these participants feel comfortable. We have to champion empathy and sensitivity. There are a few things that Andrea and I do regularly to help promote this. First of all, be super clear with your participants so they know exactly what to expect, what to wear, what type of a workout they'll be doing, and how long they'll be exercising for. Secondly, leave the room whenever possible when they're exercising. And if it's a remote study, turn off your own camera so they can feel private. Also, don't wear a suit and tie. These participants are showing up in their workout clothing, and we've actually found that wearing workout clothing ourselves helps them feel more comfortable and relaxed. And most importantly, meet the participants at their fitness level. Make clear that modifications are fine, stopping is perfectly okay, and drill home that this is about testing our product and not their fitness levels. Exercise is a very emotionally driven activity. We pick our workout, our playlist, our instructor based on how we're feeling. And sometimes it's really difficult to explain why we do those things. Andrea and I often get questions from stakeholders around these intangible, difficult to articulate topics. For example, how do our members feel when they are about to start a workout? How do they feel as soon as they finish? To help answer these questions, Andrea and I have had to come up with some creative, in-the-moment tactics. We've tried out diary studies, we've tried out word association tasks, we've also administered surveys as soon as someone finishes a workout. And we're also looking into trying out some more standardized tactics like perceived exertion scales. But this is definitely a challenge that we are still trying to figure out. So if you have any ideas on some creative ways to tackle this type of situation, we'd love to hear them on our Slack channel. For many of our members, Peloton has changed their lives, given them back time, improved their health, brought new friendships and relationships, reduced stress. And for this reason, our members feel very passionately about Peloton. And some of them take their love for Peloton pretty far. We've seen birthday cupcakes, wedding cakes, tattoos, and even proposals like this one at our cycling studio. But as we all know, when it comes to recruiting for research, it's really important to not just recruit super users and super fans, which is definitely challenging for us. So, how are we tackling this? Well, we recently hired a recruiting coordinator who's helping out with some of this stuff. We're also reconsidering our incentive models. We no longer offer Peloton-based incentives and instead have moved to more generally appealing ones like Amazon gift cards or Visa gift cards. We're also always working on the messaging in our recruitment emails and coming up with creative ways to try to screen out super fanboys and super fangirls. But this is definitely an area where we're still working and we're still trying to figure out the best processes. So again, we'd love to hear your thoughts and advice on our Slack channel. So now you've had a little sneak peek into the challenges and the excitement that we face doing research at Peloton. I'm sure you noticed that our research seems to require a lot of planning, but it's truly what we believe is necessary in order to do right by our members and create the best possible experience. Now, before I hand this off to Andrea to show you how we put all of this into practice, I'll leave you with a little sneak peek of our work in progress guidebook. Hopefully you can learn something from what we've learned and employ some of these strategies to help take your research practice to the next level.
Thank you, Beth, for sharing some of the challenges and opportunities that we face as researchers here at Peloton. I'm Andrea, and I'm going to review a case study that demonstrates how we recreate authentic research experiences here. Some of you may or may not know that we film all of our live classes here in New York. The studio is open to the public, regardless if you are a Connected Fitness member or not. The studio experience is a blend of production and fitness. Imagine if SNL and SoulCycle had a baby. We recently had a soft opening of a brand new studio in Hudson Yards, which we're calling PSNY. Unfortunately, our opening date collided with COVID, so the public hasn't been formally introduced to the new 35,000 square foot studio yet. Our product design, and research teams were tasked with updating our login experience at the studio so that it was on par with PSNY. The dated login experience at the 23rd Street studio was a tedious user experience. Members had to physically type in their emails and passwords when they logged in to the pretty small bike tablets versus the tablets that they're familiar with at home, which features a nice large screen which you can just tap on your profile and start your class. Let me paint a picture of how big of a deal that this could be. Meet Kathy, a fictitious member that represents real member stories. Kathy is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Shout out to my hometown. And she is planning her first trip to New York City. On her list is the Empire State Building, the Brooklyn Bridge, and Peloton Studios. She's been a member for the past year and is over the moon to take her first live class with her favorite instructor, Cody, in person. Kathy strategically calculated when she would hit 100 rides so that she would be in the studio. Celebrating 100 rides at Peloton is a big deal. You get a Century Club t-shirt. Members really go all out, as you can see in one of these Instagram posts. But most of all, Kathy is hoping to get a shout out from Cody when she's in the class. Cody will be able to see that Kathy is in the class because she's logged in, and the instructors have a tablet that allows them to see who's taking the class at that moment. The day is finally here. Kathy saw the Empire State Building, Brooklyn Bridge, and now she's at Peloton Studios. Kathy enters the studio. She can smell the energy from the last class. The lights are dim, kind of like a nightclub. The music is also pulsating, kind of like a nightclub. Kathy is exhilarated. She makes her way to her assigned bike. Cody walks in. She can barely contain her excitement at this point. Kathy hears the producer say, "Class starts in 60 seconds. She looks down at her tablet, ready to log in, and she sees that she needs her email and password to log in. She hasn't inputted her email and password since she's been a member for the past year and doesn't know what her email and password is. She doesn't know what her email and password is. Excitement is replaced with panic. If Kathy can't log in, Cody won't know that she's in the class. If Cody doesn't know that she's in the class, he can't give her shout out." Well, Kathy's story is fictitious. It is based off of real member stories that we hear all the time. We knew that we needed to redesign a login experience and make sure that members weren't gypped out of milestones because of this tedious login. Our product manager, Allison, had thought of a few login solutions so that our friend Kathy never had to have this off-brand experience again. Our UX designer, Nick, was committed to ensuring that whatever solution we moved forward with would have to be seamless. Thus, we dubbed the research initiative Seamless Login. There's no blueprint for testing hardware and software in a fitness setting. Of course, I was met with the, "Why don't you just show a few mock-ups to members and see what they think?" Which you know how that thrills Beth and I here at Peloton. We can do better as researchers than that. We proposed that we would address this in twofold. We would do this with two separate phases using mixed methodologies. The first being a Kano survey to get a feel for what was the most attractive feature to members. Then we'd test the winning seamless login solution, but this wouldn't be any old usability test. More on that later. Through the Kano survey, we learned that one login solution would be the most delightful attitudinally to the members that we surveyed. Like I said, surveys are great, but let's get into the juicy stuff that you are all interested in, creating an authentic research approach. We used the Shakespeare usability method. Anyone nodding their head in approval right now needs a reality check because you will not find the Shakespeare method in a textbook. We knew that we couldn't test the studio experience in isolation. We needed to tap into some of the things that define a Peloton studio experience. We knew that we needed to replicate the studio environment. Lighting, screens, rigid timelines, large groups of people, actual sweat. We also needed to invoke the emotion that comes when you are logging in for a class. The energy, stress, excitement, and sometimes, like Kathy, panic. We dubbed it the Shakespeare method because we very much created a play around a 5-minute pop cycling ride with real Peloton members in the 23rd Street studio. To put this into more academic terms, this was an artificial fly-on-the-wall observational study, but I personally like Shakespeare more. Of course, we got very into this playwright idea. We even wrote our study protocol in a playwright format with a character list. So maybe if this whole researcher thing doesn't work out, I have a shot on Broadway. Everyone had a role to play. For example, Nick, who you might have seen previously, our UX designer, he played the role of an instructor. He played the role of an instructor so well that after the study, our participants asked if they had walked into an instructor audition. Our PM Allison played the role of a studio producer, observing the room for any issues that members may have encountered. Developers and other teammates on the Seamless Login initiative also played a role as extras, where they sat in the back of the class and observed our actual participants. Our participants, unbeknownst to them, were also playing different parts. We recruited members who frequented the studio by distributing an email saying, we have an upcoming project at Peloton Studios on 23rd Street. It'll encompass a light 5 to 10 minute cycling class, followed by a brief discussion with members of the product team. Little did our members know that they were all linked back to predetermined assigned roles based on use cases. So first we had the happy path. This member arrives at the studio. The front desk tells them that they are assigned to bike 1. They go to sit up bike 1 and they're all set. This participant arrives at the studio, checks in at the front desk, is told to go to bike 3. They go to bike 3 and someone else is there. Another use case was if a member shows up late. We did not predetermine who would play this character. We were banking on a participant showing up late. As researchers, we know that participants don't always show up on time. So we took a gamble and it paid off because at least 3 people did indeed show up late for this. And finally, member who wants to move to the front row. Often we have members who want to move their seat to the front row if it's available. Some of our members are even famous for this. Brad Needs Abs, his leaderboard name, for example, has been featured in news outlets like the Wall Street Journal and Good Morning America, reporting on his tendency to sit in the front row. So we had Brad originally signed to the back. Then once the class started, the producer, Allison, said, hey, Brad Needs Abs, do you want to move to the front row? We even had a scenic design. Basically, our diagram of where all of our characters would be seated during the ride. Our employees, like I said, sat in the back row and they had particular numbers and participants that they were instructed to observe. And this setup also made the room feel a little bit more full when people entered the room. Finally, we had our login prototypes uploaded to each individual bike because we were testing the login experience after all. Lights, camera, action. Finally, all of our study protocol preparations were ready to test for a live 5-minute pop ride. A producer announced the start of the class, and members entered the studio with their extras ready to note their observations. Truly one of my favorite testing sessions, and sometimes I even take Nick's 5-minute class on QA when I can. Following our observations, our teammates who acted as extras were equipped with a discussion guide so that they could follow up with their assigned participants. The next day, we had a sync on all of our observational and attitudinal data to conclude our recommendations. Because all stakeholders were involved in the minutia of the data collection, our analysis and next steps took all of 60 minutes, which sometimes, as you know, as researchers, can take as much as months to prepare our analysis and reports. So if you're thinking about adapting the Shakespeare method to your research practice, here are a few guidelines to help you get started, and we'll also distribute these at the end of our talk. The seamless login research was a hard process, but a creative process. Think of all of the upfront hard work and details that went into a 5-minute test, but the analysis and recommendations were swift and conclusive. And also, the more you include your stakeholders, the more that they want to be involved. It's a rallying call for the entire team, and that can be really exciting. We still don't have all of the answers when it comes to replicating the workout experience, and that came to light during our login research. How do you capture some of those intangible feelings that people face when they're logging in or when they're riding? How do we handle some participants who are obsessed with Peloton? Hopefully we can use this as an opportunity to crowdsource ideas from all of you brilliant researchers out there. And finally, we hope that this talk compelled you to think critically and creatively about authenticity in your research practices. Thank you.